I wasn't looking at the road when it happened. I was staring at my rearview mirror, watching my nephew Jake navigate through the parking lot behind me. He wasn't tapping his white cane against the curbs like he usually did. He was walking straight toward my car, eyes locked on my brake lights, moving with perfect confidence. My heart stopped. Jake had been blind since birth, or so everyone thought. Let me back up. 3 weeks earlier, I'd gotten the call that changed everything. "Emma, I need your help." My older brother Marcus sounded exhausted. "Dad's in the hospital, heart attack. They're saying he needs surgery, and Mom's falling apart. Can you come stay with us for a few weeks? Help with Jake while we deal with all this?" I'd said yes immediately. Of course I did. Family is family, even when you haven't been close. Marcus and I had drifted apart after I moved to Portland for work 5 years ago. He'd stayed in our hometown of Riverside, taken over Dad's construction supply business, married his high school sweetheart Rachel. They had Jake, who was 10 now. The diagnosis had come when Jake was just 6 months old. Leber congenital amaurosis, the doctors said. Genetic blindness, no cure. Marcus and Rachel had been devastated, but they'd adapted. Special schools, orientation and mobility training, the whole 9 yards. Jake was a sweet kid, gentle and quiet. He never complained about his disability. I'd arrived on a Sunday afternoon. The house was the same 2-story colonial Dad had built 30 years ago, now with ramps added and braille labels on everything. Rachel hugged me at the door, her eyes red from crying. "Thank you for coming, Emma. I don't know what we'd do without you." Marcus looked like he'd aged 10 years. The stress of running the business and dealing with Dad's medical crisis was written all over his face. But there was something else, too, something I couldn't quite name. A tension in his jaw, a quickness in his movements. "Jake's in his room," Rachel said. "He's been so worried about Grandpa. Maybe you could spend some time with him, take his mind off things?" I found Jake sitting on his bed, hands folded in his lap, facing the window. He couldn't see the oak tree outside, but I'd learned that blind kids still oriented toward light and sound. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "Remember me? Aunt Emma?" He turned toward my voice, and I noticed something odd. His eyes moved almost like they were tracking me as I stepped into the room. But that was impossible. I'd read about his condition. No light perception at all. "Hi, Aunt Emma." His voice was small, careful. "Are you going to stay with us?" "For a while, yeah. Your grandpa's sick, so I'm here to help out." Over the next few days, I fell into a routine. Mornings, I'd drive Marcus to the hospital to see Dad. Afternoons, I'd work remotely from the dining room table while Rachel was at her part-time nursing job. Evenings, I'd help with Jake, reading to him, playing audio games, just being there. But I kept noticing things. Little things that didn't add up. The way Jake's head would turn before someone entered a room, before their footsteps were audible. How he never bumped into furniture that had been moved, even though Rachel swore she always told him about changes in the layout. The time I dropped a pen and he immediately said, "It rolled under the couch," pointing exactly where it had gone. "Good ears," I'd said, but my skin prickled. "Really good," he'd whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. Then came the night that changed everything. I was working late in the dining room, reviewing financial reports for my company. Marcus had asked me to look at some paperwork for Dad's business too, since I was the accountant in the family. I'd agreed, though numbers made my head hurt after a full day of my own work. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Light, cautious. Jake appeared in the doorway in his pajamas, without his cane. "Aunt Emma?" He was trembling. "Are you alone?" "Yeah, buddy. Your parents went to bed. What's wrong?" He walked straight to me, not feeling his way along the wall, not sweeping the space in front of him. He walked right up to my chair and put his hand on mine. Then he looked directly into my eyes and whispered, "I can see." The room tilted. "What?" "I can see," he repeated, tears streaming down his face. "I've always been able to see, but you can't tell them, Aunt Emma. Please, you can't ever tell them." My mouth went dry. "Jake, I don't understand. Why would you pretend to be blind?" His small fingers gripped mine tighter. "Because of what I saw, what I heard." He glanced back toward the stairs, terrified. "When I was 6, I woke up one night. Mom and Dad were in the office. The door was open just a crack. I went to the hallway and I watched them." "Watched them do what?" "Dad was at the computer." Mom was standing behind him, and she said, "It has to be perfect, Marcus. If your father finds out we've been taking money from the business accounts, he'll cut us out entirely. The old man's never trusted you to run things right." Ice water flooded my veins. Jake continued, his voice shaking. Dad said, "I know. That's why Emma can never find out either. She's the golden child who became a fancy accountant in the city. If she sees the books, she'll know immediately." And then Mom said, "What if we just accelerated his heart condition? It would look natural. Then there'd be no investigation." I couldn't breathe. "Jake." I made a noise, just a little gasp. They heard me. They came out into the hallway, and I was standing there in my pajamas, and they knew I'd heard them. What did they do? Mom knelt down in front of me. She had this smile, but her eyes were wrong, and she said, "Jakey, sweetheart, you know how sometimes you see things that aren't real, like in dreams?" I shook my head, but she kept going. "Sometimes little boys imagine things, and if they tell people about their imaginations, especially things about their parents, those little boys get taken away. Bad people come and take them from their families forever." Oh God, oh God. She said if I ever told anyone what I thought I heard, they'd send me away and I'd never see Grandpa again. She said the only way to stay safe, to keep everyone safe, was to pretend I couldn't see anything at all. She made it sound like it was my choice, like I was being brave. "How long?" I managed to ask. "How long have you been pretending?" 4 years. His voice broke. 4 years of acting blind, letting them think I had the disease, letting everyone think I was disabled. They got sympathy, money from Grandpa for my medical expenses, disability benefits. No one questions a family dealing with a blind child. I pulled him into my arms. He was shaking so hard. "I heard them last week," he whispered against my shoulder. "When they thought I was asleep, Mom said now was the perfect time. With Grandpa already in the hospital, she could adjust his medications. Make it look like the hospital made a mistake. And if you started looking at the business books too closely, they'd say you were too grief-stricken to notice you were making errors. That Grandpa's death made you mentally unstable." "Why are you telling me this now?" He pulled back and looked at me with those clear-seeing eyes. "Because this morning I watched Mom put pills in your coffee, small white ones from a bottle in her purse. You poured it out because you said it tasted bitter, remember? But she's going to try again. And I can't pretend anymore. I can't watch her hurt you too. The coffee. I had poured it out. I'd thought the creamer was spoiled. Jake, we need to go to the police." "No!" He grabbed my arms. "You don't understand. Dad's a respected businessman. Mom's a nurse. They'll say I'm a confused kid, that you're the unstable one, that you're making up stories about your own brother. We need proof." He was right. A child's testimony against his parents, especially when there was no physical evidence, and me, the sister who'd been away for 5 years, suddenly making accusations? "What do we do?" I asked. "Tomorrow, you tell them you need to go to the office to review Dad's business files. Say you need the physical copies, not just the digital ones. Dad's been sloppy. The evidence is there, in the paper records. I heard him tell Mom he needs to shred them before you think to look. How do I get them to let me go alone? Tell them you want to surprise Grandpa by organizing everything before he gets out of surgery. Make it about your grief, about wanting to help. Mom will encourage you. She'll think it's a good way to keep you busy and away from the house." This child had been playing chess while pretending not to see the board for 4 years. My heart broke for him. "Okay," I said. "Okay, tomorrow I'll go. But Jake, tonight you need to go back to bed and act like nothing happened. Can you do that?" He nodded. "I've been acting for a long time, Aunt Emma." I watched him walk back to the stairs, white cane in hand now, tapping his way up like the blind child he was supposed to be. At the landing, he turned back to me. In the darkness, his eyes found mine perfectly. "Thank you for believing me," he mouthed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the dining room table, laptop open, mind racing. Every interaction with Marcus and Rachel replayed in my head, but now through a different lens. Rachel's insistence that I use the coffee maker she'd prepared each morning. Marcus's casual questions about whether I was reviewing Dad's business files yet. The way they both seemed so interested in my mental state, asking if I was sleeping well, if the stress was getting to me. The pills in my coffee. Jesus Christ. At breakfast, I played my role. I was thinking, I said, buttering toast with hands that wanted to shake. I should go through Dad's office files at the business, get everything organized before he's released. It would be one less thing for him to worry about. Rachel's eyes lit up. Oh, Emma, that's so thoughtful. He'd really appreciate that. Marcus hesitated. The office is kind of a mess right now. Maybe wait until... I don't mind mess, I interrupted. I just want to help. I feel so useless sitting around here. Of course you do, Rachel soothed. You're a doer, always have been. Marcus, give her the keys. Let her feel productive. Something flickered across my brother's face. Calculation. Then he smiled. Sure, yeah, thanks, sis. Jake sat at the table, moving his hands across his Braille practice sheets. His head was down, but I knew he was listening to every word. The office was in a converted warehouse on the edge of town. Dad had built the business from nothing, and he'd always been meticulous about records. Marcus had taken over 5 years ago, when Dad started having health problems. According to the financial statements I'd been shown, the business was doing fine. Steady revenue, decent profit margins. But if Jake was right, those digital statements were lies. I parked in the empty lot. It was Saturday. No employees would be here. I unlocked the front door and made my way to the back office, where Dad's old wooden filing cabinets stood like sentinels against the wall. For the next 3 hours, I dove into paper trails, bank statements, invoices, receipts, payroll records. And there it was. All of it. Hidden in plain sight, once you knew to look. Payments to vendors that didn't exist, inflated supply costs, money systematically siphoned from accounts into an LLC registered under Rachel's maiden name. Over the past 5 years, they'd stolen nearly $400,000. But it was worse than theft. There were medical records, too, mixed in with business files. Notes in Rachel's handwriting about Dad's medications, his dosages, a printout of drug interactions. A highlighted section about how certain blood pressure medications, when mixed with common supplements, could trigger cardiac events. They'd been planning this. Maybe not actively poisoning him, but certainly setting the stage for a convenient natural heart attack. My hands were shaking as I photographed every page with my phone. I was so focused that I didn't hear the door open behind me. I told her you'd come here. I spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway, and he didn't look like my brother anymore. His face was cold, expressionless. I told Rachel you'd eventually snoop. You always were too smart for your own good, Emma. Marcus, what have you done? What I had to do. He stepped into the room. Dad never believed in me, always compared me to you. Emma, the brilliant one. Emma who got out. Emma who made something of herself. Meanwhile, I'm here running his company, breaking my back, and he treats me like hired help. Do you know he was planning to restructure before the heart attack? Going to bring in an outside manager. His own son wasn't good enough. So you stole from him? Tried to kill him? We accelerated nature, he said calmly. Dad's heart was already weak. We just helped it along. And the money? We earned it. Years of working for less than we deserved. Consider it back pay. And me? The pills in my coffee? He smiled, and it was worse than any anger. You were supposed to get sick slowly. Confused, Rachel's a nurse. She knows the right combinations. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, you'd be mentally incompetent. We'd have you committed for your own safety, grief-stricken and delusional. And then no one would believe anything you said about the finances. Jake knows, I said quietly. He's known for 4 years. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. Fear. Jake's blind. He doesn't know anything. He can see, Marcus. He's always been able to see. And he heard you that night. He heard everything. The color drained from my brother's face. That's impossible, the doctors confirmed. Rachel's a nurse. She knew the symptoms to fake, the right responses to coach him on. And a 4-year-old who's terrified of losing his family will do anything his parents tell him. Even give up his sight. You can't prove any of this. I held up my phone. I have photos of everything in these cabinets, and I've already sent them to 3 different email accounts, including my lawyers. If anything happens to me, they'll go straight to the police. It was a bluff. I hadn't sent anything yet, but Marcus didn't know that. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. I waited until I heard his car start, until I was sure he was gone. Then I sat down on the floor of Dad's office and shook for 15 minutes straight. But I wasn't done. I called Detective Sarah Morrison, a family friend who'd gone to school with me. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Emma, this is serious. False imprisonment of a child, financial exploitation of an elder, possible attempted murder. But we need Jake's testimony, and we need to protect him. Can you get him out of that house?" "I don't know. If they realize he told me." "Then we move now. I'm sending units to your location and to the house. We'll get Jake safe, and we'll get your father protection at the hospital." "But Emma?" "Don't go back there. Stay at the office until my people arrive." I should have listened. But I kept thinking about Jake, alone in that house with Rachel, if Marcus had called her, if they knew I knew. I drove back. The house looked normal when I pulled up. Rachel's car in the driveway, lights on inside. I found her in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up when I entered and smiled. "How'd it go at the office?" "Feel productive?" "Very," I said carefully. "Where's Jake?" "His room. Reading, I think. Marcus isn't back yet?" "No." She went back to chopping. The knife moved rhythmically against the cutting board. Thunk, thunk, thunk. "Rachel, I need to ask you something." "Why Jake? Why make your own son give up 4 years of his childhood?" Her hand stilled. The knife hovered over a carrot. "I don't know what you're talking about. He told me everything. About that night, about what you made him do." Rachel set down the knife very carefully. When she turned to face me, her expression was pleasant, concerned, the perfect mask of a caring mother. "Emma, I think the stress is getting to you. You're not making sense. The police are on their way." Something cracked in her facade. "You called the police? On your own family? After everything we've done for you, letting you stay here, trusting you. You were poisoning me. We were helping you. You've been so anxious, so stressed. A few pills to help you sleep, to calm down? They're upstairs." Jake's voice cut through the house. We both turned. He stood at the top of the stairs, without his cane, looking directly at us with clear, focused eyes. "I saw you put them in her coffee every morning, Mom. I saw you and Dad changing Grandpa's medical records. I saw everything. I've always seen everything." Rachel's face went white. "Jake, baby, you're confused." "I'm not confused." His voice broke. "I'm not blind. You made me pretend for 4 years. You said if I ever told anyone, they'd take me away forever, that Grandpa would die, that it would be my fault. I was 6 years old, Mom. I was 6, and you taught me how to lie about something I couldn't change." The sound of sirens filled the air. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Rachel looked at me, then at Jake, then at the door. I saw her calculating, trying to find an angle, a way out. "You turned my son against me," she said quietly. "You poisoned him against his own mother." "No," Jake said, and his voice was stronger now. "You did that yourself." The next few hours were a blur. Police, statements, social workers, Jake clinging to my hand as they led Rachel out in handcuffs. Marcus showing up, trying to bluster and threaten, until they arrested him too. Dad's doctor confirmed that his medications had been tampered with, not enough to kill him outright, but enough to severely compromise his already weak heart. Another week or two, and he might not have made it. The financial evidence was overwhelming. $400,000, stolen over 5 years. Dad's signature forged on dozens of documents. Bank accounts in Rachel's maiden name, funneling money into offshore holdings. Jake testified. A 10-year-old boy who'd given up his sight to survive, who'd lived in silent darkness for 4 years, rather than risk losing his family. The judge cried during his testimony. So did half the courtroom. Marcus and Rachel were charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, child endangerment, and attempted murder. The prosecution pushed for maximum sentences. They got 20 years each, no parole for 15. Dad survived his surgery. When he was strong enough, I told him everything. He broke down, apologizing to Jake over and over for not seeing what was happening in his own family. "How could I miss it?" Dad kept saying. "My own grandson, suffering right in front of me." "They were good at hiding," I said quietly, "and Jake was better at pretending than anyone knew." The court awarded me temporary custody of Jake while Dad recovered. He'd get permanent guardianship once he was well enough, but for now, Jake stayed with me in my Portland apartment. The first time I took him to school without his white cane, he cried, happy tears this time. I can just be a regular kid? He asked. You can be whatever you want. He still has nightmares sometimes. Wakes up thinking he's back in that house, pretending not to see while his parents destroyed everything around him. We're in therapy together, working through it. But there are good moments too. The first time he rode a bike without assistance. The first time he read a book for pleasure, not as an act. The day he got glasses because he's actually a little nearsighted, and he laughed at the irony. I pretended to be blind for 4 years, he said, adjusting the frames. And now I actually need vision correction. Is that karma? That's just life being weird, I told him. Dad's business is recovering. I've been running it remotely, cleaning up the financial mess, rebuilding trust with clients. Dad wants to retire soon. Let me take over permanently. I haven't decided yet. 6 months after the arrests, Jake and I visited Dad at his house. It was a Sunday afternoon, warm and bright. We sat on the back porch, drinking lemonade and watching birds at the feeder. Aunt Emma, Jake said quietly. Yeah, buddy. Thank you for believing me. That night, when I told you, you didn't act like I was crazy. You just believed me. I put my arm around his shoulders. Of course I believed you. You're the bravest person I know. I'm not brave. I was scared every day. That's what brave means, being scared and doing it anyway. He leaned against me, and we watched the birds together. 2 survivors, rebuilding something that had been broken, learning to trust again. Inside, my phone buzzed, a message from the prosecutor. The appeals had been denied. Marcus and Rachel would serve their full sentences. I didn't tell Jake. Not yet. He'd been through enough. For now, I just let him sit in the sunshine, watching the world with eyes that could finally freely see. I have a question, he said after a while. Shoot. When I'm older, when I understand things better, will you tell me why they did it? Why they chose money over me? I thought about how to answer that. How to explain that sometimes people's choices aren't about you at all, that damage and greed and fear can make people do terrible things, that being family doesn't guarantee love. When you're older, I said finally, I'll tell you that I don't know, that maybe they don't even know, but I'll also tell you that their choices don't define you. You chose to be brave. You chose to tell the truth, and that's what matters. He nodded, satisfied with that answer for now. We sat in the sunlight, in the silence that wasn't scary anymore, in the sight that was finally his own. And for the first time in 4 years, Jake was just a kid again. Not blind, not pretending. Just Jake, just my nephew, who saw everything and saved us all.